Broadcasting from the campus of Lynn Benton Community College. We are the Mid-Valley STEM-CTE Hub. I'm your host, Casey, and this is Closing the Gap. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us for our Season 3 finale of Closing the Gap. Don't worry though, we will be back in the fall with many more interviews, though our guest today is Frances Tice. Frances is a lifelong tinkerer and a skilled mechanic on all things with an engine. Currently, she is working as an instructional assistant at Lynn Benton Community College in the Heavy Diesel Equipment Department. Thanks for joining us, Frances. Would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and the type of work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So my job is with Lynn Benton Community College in the Heavy Equipment Diesel program. I am an instructional assistant, and my job every day is to assist students in their learning tasks, and also fill in for instructors if they need my assistance, if they happen to, need extra help, or sometimes I get to be a sub for a minute.
Cool. That's awesome. So not everyone in our listening group might know what HED means. Could you kind of break down that acronym and give us like a little bit of an explanation of like what kind of vehicles fall into that category?
Sure. So HED is Heavy Equipment Diesel. Mm-hmm. So it's just a quick acronym. Field is geared specifically toward heavy equipment, tractors, quarry type equipment vehicles, semi-trucks, trailers, anything that is not automotive specifically. It's the stepper up of the bigger stuff.
What is there like a big difference in how you work on automotive vehicles, like passenger vehicles versus a heavy diesel equipment?
Sure. Yeah, there's quite a big difference. As far as the technology, it's very similar. For example, some of the things that transition over might be your AC system. That it has similar working and components just like automotive does, only we just have a couple different components that work better with the diesel side, considering what we have. Another thing is just general electrical knowledge can transfer to both sides. So those are just a couple things. The rest of it, if you're working on a big piece of heavy equipment, you have what's called air brake system. And the normal automobile has got a hydraulic system, a braking system. So one side is dealing with fluids and the other is just dealing with air. And plus, the components that you're dealing with on the heavy equipment side are going to be much larger, and you may need bigger equipment to move that stuff, which is using things such as cranes or forklifts to move some components around.
One of the things I was wondering about, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, is it a mechanic that you would call yourself?
We're actually more technician. The difference is that mechanic is just more of somebody who's just kind of hit the ground running, learning how to be a mechanic just in the general field without the education. So a technician is going to be more specified, and they're going to be more educated, and they're probably going to have that certificate in the background or that degree or BA, whatever that says that they have met the requirements for a qualified education. Ours is AED specifically based. So ours is an accredited program that allows us to have a specified certificate in the field that we're signed up for.
Awesome. So it kind of sounded like you don't just work on like engines. Like that was my assumption originally. It sounds like you kind of work on the vehicle as a whole. Is that correct?
Yeah. We can either be what's called a fleet tech, which works on the vehicle as a whole, or anything that, let's say, the company owns. It could be anywhere from chainsaws up to crummies, which crummies are in the field a nickname for the medium diesel trucks out there. That could be your Dodge 3500, your Ford F450, or your Chevy 3500 HD.
Oh, wow.
Those are medium-sized diesel trucks, or you could end up in this big hauler, a John Deere hauler working on something like that, or a big cat excavator. I mean, you could be all over the field doing that as a fleet tech. If you want to come down and work on something that's more specified, you could just go straight into working only on engines, or only on transmissions, or only on brake specified, and that would just be in your title.
Interesting. Do people that want to work in specified areas of HDD, do they like work at certain types of companies, or like pursue certain types of positions, or is it just kind of the luck of the draw?
That's one of those things I really love about Lynn Benton Community College. I mean, we have instructors that really work with the students, and they take time with the students and with the industry partners, and kind of they're the bridging gap between the two. So we're saving money by teaching the student, but we're also saving the money for the industry partner by helping them find that right match.
Okay,
so
cool.
we watch how the students work, and then we can see, oh, well, they would be a good manager, or maybe they would be just a good recruiter. I mean, it depends on what the student wants too, and we look at really what their passion is. It's really nice to have that student that's been trained either way in this industry, because even if they became a recruiter or an outside salesperson, they're very familiar with the lingo, and they're familiar with the product.
Awesome. That's really cool. So I also understand that you're a graduate from the LBCC program.
Yes, ma'am. I ended up being a transfer student. I did the diesel side at another community college, and now I've come over to this side and did the heavy equipment side over at Lynn Benton Community College. And I got a little bit of double time, but I just absolutely love what I was doing. So I was just hungry for the knowledge, and I just grabbed up any kind of anything I could get. I wanted to spend more time learning what I was learning, and getting as much information and experience out of what I was doing, because I just really wanted to. It's just a passion I have.
Do you enjoy being a student?
I'm no longer. Yeah, being a student with Lynn Benton was probably the most memorable. The other community college I was at had components sitting out there on the table for you. And so when I came out and actually getting a job in the field with an excavating company right off the bat, I was sitting there. I didn't recognize half the components that came off of my bench that were sitting on the piece of equipment in front of me.
Oh, wow.
So when I went to Lynn Benton Community College after that, I was just, oh, wow, this is really different, because the difference with Lynn Benton Community College is that we had the actual loaders, excavators, the semi-trucks, tractors, anything that was out there, we actually had it on our lot, and that goes per, depending on the companies that are, cycling things in at the time, or donations.
Mm-hmm.
They were the ones that were able to help us as students get our hands on that equipment and be able to recognize what was inside of that equipment, because we're in it working on it. So when I go out to a different company to work after that, mm-hmm. at a dealer, and ended up working with Pearson Trucks at some point, while I was a student. Before it was excavation, and then it was a Peterson Trucks. And then as soon as I was getting there, I was like, oh, I recognize everything now. Now this is really cool. And we actually had the equipment in the shop, and that was such a big deal to me.
You sound really excited about it. I would love to hear about some of your experiences working for Peterson.
Absolutely. You'd have to come visit me, because now I'm an instructional assistant, and now this is a whole different ballgame.
Totally. Did you, was your goal to be an educator when you were in school?
It was something that I thought maybe I'll end up doing, when I'm getting close to retiring, and that my body or my mind, whatever, is just not wanting to do it anymore, or, my passion would never go away. But I just thought, well, that'll be something I'll do later on down the line. Mm-hmm. But while I was working and being a student at the same time, I saw that this position opened up, and the team and the knowledge of the people that are there, I was just like, how could you pass this up? I mean,
Totally.
the whole world opens up to you with this platform that's there. And so I just thought, well, I got to go this way. I just have to.
Awesome. Yeah. I would love to hear about some of your experiences, though, if you wouldn't mind telling us on the podcast about, kind of working in the field, and maybe what are some big wins that you've had. Maybe we could start there.
There have been times when I've worked on stuff that, some challenging things to work on are like kingpins.
Okay, what's that? I don't know anything about
Right.
any sort of engine.
So, different from the automotive automotive, it would be similar to a steering knuckle, we would call it.
Oh, so nothing to do with the engine at all.
No, so this is in your suspension system. So your wheel is connected to this little steering knuckle deal.
Okay.
Well, ours is got a big cylinder-looking deal, metal that'll go right through your suspension system and your A-frame, and it'll hold your wheel on to a semi-truck or a loader, whatever it is.
Okay.
So anyway, those are difficult to work on because it takes a lot of physical force.
Mm-hmm.
But my wins have been that I've been able to work on them pretty well and get within 0.003 of an inch with my play on the wheel.
Oh, wow.
And the kingpin itself.
How do you measure? Sorry to interrupt you, but how do you measure 0.003 of an inch?
Well, we have these special dial gauges, and they are specified for measuring your wheel play or kingpin play.
Okay.
I'd have to unfortunately Google one and show it to you what it looks like.
Okay.
But it is this dial gauge. We put it on there, adjust it to where it's barely touching our component that we're wanting to measure, and then we set our dial gauge to 0. Mm-hmm. And then depending on what part I'm looking at, I'll probably use my very long crowbar. Mm-hmm. And then I'll try and push the wheel up and down mm-hmm. to try and measure that that measurement on the dial gauge, and it'll tell me how much is in that play. And if I've done it right, I've only gotten the goal is to get within 0.005 of an inch, but usually mine was always around 3. You don't want 0 or 1 because then you're just too stiff.
Right.
But the idea is that when you've got just that little bit of play, then by the time it's gone out on the road and your suspension system has went and just settled, mm-hmm. then that little bit of play may go to 5,000, may not, but then
cool.
You're within spec.
Awesome. That's really cool. I just have to admit that's so over my head.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I hope I was able to.
I mean, I think you answered, or you finished the story you were starting to tell me, but I also am just like, awesome. But then I like
where are we at?
I'm not mechanically inclined at all. I'm like, I'll work with something like this. It's about as mechanical as I am.
So my win is the kingpin, mm-hmm. being able to set that truck out on the road and it don't come back. So, which is usually a good thing because the company is happy with it. Your boss is happy with you.
Yeah, totally. That is a good win for sure. Mm-hmm. So, how did you start into the field of HED?
Well, I would really say it went straight back in. It's a little bit of a story, but so bear with me. But it would have started clear back in high school. I had a really difficult past, 12 schools by the time I graduated high school. There's a counselor who was just asking me, well, I'm a little concerned about you. What are you going to do? I was working myself to death on my first job, and after school I was helping with theater, building sets and stuff like that, and I was in charge of showing students how to use a drill gun, or how to put in screws on or how to use a table saw, or how do you take measurements and stuff like that. That was my job back then. Awesome. On top of my actual paying job.
So you're always kind of mechanically inclined.
Yeah. So I went and this counselor lady at the high school was just like, well, we're going there's these programs that, PCC and Mount Hood offer, that are going to help students transition to college. Mm-hmm. That was their hope.
Right.
And, The four subjects were, medical, computer repair, business, and then automotive. And I said, I'll try automotive. And she looked at me like, are you serious? Well, there were 60 guys that went in that first year. By the time 3 years was over with, there was still me and 13 other guys, and I had a 3-year certificate of completion.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, life kind of set me back a little bit, and so I was having trouble getting into the field. So I had a family, and all of a sudden, and then I faced a lot of discrimination in the beginning. So it was that, I had 3 different companies tell me you're too pretty to work in the shop. And I was surprised by that. These companies are not attached, and they're saying the same thing. So nobody took me serious to get into the field.
Yeah.
And for several years I thought, well, this is crazy. I know I can do this. I even was surprising my dad at home. So I went in and I tried it, a traditional way to get into medical billing and coding. And then the college I went to gave me a diploma, but they shut down because of fraudulent reasons and serious lawsuits. And so trying to get into the field, I no longer have something that is valid to be in the field. I'm no longer qualified, and I'm paying on a student loan.
Oof.
So it's like, forget this. I'm going back to what I know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna really come back. And so I was a little discouraged at some point, and I went in to become a school bus driver. My dad is a school bus driver, and I thought, I'll try it.
Yeah. What'd you think?
I absolutely loved it. It definitely put me in a challenge that I didn't expect. They found out I could work on stuff, and so I ended up in between my shifts working in the shop doing light maintenance. But I found out I couldn't be pulled in to be a serious tech because not only they may have needed the tech, but they also needed a cover driver. They needed somebody who could pull the trips, and not only that, drive their Greyhound-looking coach that had this second tag axle in the back.
Yeah.
And nobody else was qualified.
So they needed you to
So I jumped in. And, I could show up at work in 5 minutes. Here's the route, and a route that I've never done, and here's the time you got to be there. And I'm like, got it. They could call over the radio and say, hey, Francis, could you do this for us? And I'm like, got it. So I became their go-to person, but it was just definitely there's a point where I needed to move on. Mm-hmm. Love the kids, but I was like, I kind of want something a little different, a little more, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I needed more brain stimulation other than, not as if kids weren't enough, but.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how did you transition then from driving the school buses to getting back into the mechanic or the technician side of things?
Well, that's when I ended up going, I ended up trying over at PCC to the diesel side. And awesome. Then I unexpectedly ended up moving out here. And I checked into maybe going back to PCC, but then I tried checking into Lynn Benton and see what they had to offer. I walked in their shop and I just fell in love with it. I was like, you cannot pass this up. Look at this shop. Look at the equipment they have. Look at the technology they've got, And of course, not only that, it was like, it's so basic. We need more technology there than what we have. They only have like one of everything. Well, we kind of need 20 of everything.
Sure, yeah. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but does this skill set qualify you for other sorts of careers that are more mechanically based or like more technically based in the way of like working on like moving parts?
Well, yeah, that was a good, because right before in between the transition between PCC and Lynn Benton, that's when I went working with an excavation company that was locally here in Sweet Home. It was R&L Excavation.
Awesome.
And I found out that I could work on all kinds of stuff. I got inside of a rock crusher that was as big as, it had a hydraulic cylinder that was as big as me, and I'm changing this, 3-inch bolt, in diameter.
I think it must have weighed a ton.
I'm knocking out pins out of, a bucket, which was very dangerous to do. and again, that was another, 2.5-inch diameter pin that was clear across his bucket, and I've got my boss on the other side slamming one side, and I'm slamming the other. It's like, anyway, So some of the educational opportunities that come with that I found was that you could be specified.
Mm-hmm.
As I talked about earlier, we can be fleet tech. Fleet tech works on anything and everything. You would also be fleet techs are those guys you see running around in the service trucks.
Okay.
They are called out to a job. They have to go to the scene, and they don't always know what to expect. They might have somebody that calls and says, "Hey, we got kind of a problem." You get out there, and it's actually a catastrophe that you have to fix. Or specified would be that transmissions but in this equipment field, the job opportunities, we have Pape, Kenworth, Cummins, Diesel Detroit, International. We've got all these companies behind us that are helping support these students. And you really, it depends on the company what you can be specified toward or not. Well, I pulled a classical dumbness.
Okay. This sounds interesting. Go on.
There's a loud shop one time. I did not speak up. I said something but did not speak up, and I basically allowed a coworker to pull a truck out of the shop without any oil in it.
Oh boy. That would seize up the engine pretty fast, right?
That was a down moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get red on that one?
Well, actually, after that, I kind of learned, why it was so important as a female to have confidence,
Mm-hmm.
to speak up to somebody when something's wrong. And, I just didn't have enough confidence, to really step my foot down. And now I look back and it's like, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But back then, I was really intimidated in the fact that here I am, I'm only doing PMI. I'm only, PMI is preventative maintenance inspections.
Oh, okay.
So that would mean oil changes, greasing equipment. And I just didn't stand up to the guy and really make sure I got his attention and told him what was going on. So
For sure. I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of experiences early in your career that kind of maybe led to that confidence issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I can
Stuff I can't talk about.
For sure. I understand. Yeah. I mean, even the stuff that you did share, it seems like, gosh, like how many times do you have to get denied for the same reason, something that you can't tell?
It was years. I mean, I had people that weren't taking me serious. I mean, and they would put me in the biggest set of coveralls because they weren't going to take me serious. They're just, And actually that became a safety issue one day. I was trying to get off of a semi-truck after changing a light on the back of the semi-truck. And the coveralls are so big, they hung me up. And I had to have my coworker come help me.
Oh, no.
Like, could you come over? And they're just laughing. And I was laughing, too, because it's like, this is funny.
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, I had to earn my respect. So, and I understood that.
For sure. Well, like what kind of advice would you give to young women or women that are transferring into a type of career like this to help them succeed?
Well, it's true that some of the stories that I have are kind of a little intimidating. But the dynamic and that kind of intimidation doesn't exist like it did. There are some little small companies that you might go to that kind of, are a little more challenging. But as a whole in the field, the attitude out there, the respect for women, respect for minorities is changing. And I don't see the same thing as I've had to deal with out there. It's the opportunities, the hand is out there. You just have to grab it and they will pull you along. What I would say is, hey, come see me. Come meet my fellow instructors. There's Barry Payton, Gar Burrows, John Alvin, Dan McIntosh, all wonderful instructors. And yeah, come visit us. I mean, we all work as a team to help place you in wherever the job is, the career is that you would just absolutely love. Maybe you go in there with one set of thinking, but then you come out like, actually, I like this better.
Awesome.
Could be anything.
So besides coming to visit you and your colleagues, what are maybe some other things that people could do to get started down this path?
Oh, one of the things that helped me that I remember, and some of my buddies in the past, was that we would start out in the field, even just sweeping floors.
Cool. Shop
And
hands?
those were shop hand, yeah. And those were just entry level jobs, but it got us familiar with equipment and it got us familiar with the lingo. So when the technicians had something to say or something to ask you to do for them, you got to understand, where, how the safety issues work and what to look for. And, technicians in a shop, we have a habit of looking down on the ground so we don't trip over anything.
For sure.
Things like that. I mean, that gets you on a roll. There's companies out there just like Boss Art Trucking, Pape, Coastline. These companies are set up specifically to make sure that they help students just in general started off in PMI. They're willing to train. They're out there like, hey, come with us. We can teach you. We can send you where you want to go. They might be able to work with our school on. So let's say our program will teach you how PMI works. The companies themselves will give you the experience. That's what I want to do.
Right on.
Definitely get your entry level, get your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're just, becoming a parts person, that's another one. Here you are talking with all the companies, you're learning customer service skills. That's a good one. Recruiting, that's another thing. All of these companies are looking to hire somebody as a technician, but if you're out there as the front man just saying, hey, come to, help work with us, I mean, that's another thing that kind of gets you associated with some of these people, building those relationships, and then you realize, hey, I could go in and do this too.
That's awesome. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about today that you think that maybe people looking into a career like this should know?
Yeah, definitely. Since I've invited you to come visit me, we have what's called an open house dyno day coming up, and that is May 19th and 20th this year. We have 17.5-inch rollers in our ground. It's hard to kind of explain, but imagine this shop room specified for our dyno event. So a dyno event is we put our vehicles, and in our case, semi-trucks, mm-hmm. only 17.5 rollers. And we tie them down in chains so it can't go nowhere. Mm-hmm. And then we hook it up to a computer and to monitor the specifications that you have at it. And when it's tested at its peak RPMs, then it's able to give you the right information. We print that out and we compare it to the information that is with the manufacturer's specifications. And you can tell, which is the selling point of your vehicle. If you want to sell your vehicle, you can say, hey, look at this. It does better than the manufacturer specs. Or, well, we got some things to work on.
Right on. Very cool.
Yeah. So it's actually a fun event. People get to come see what LBC is all about. And then they also get to meet our industry partners and they meet the instructors. There's usually firsthand students there. You can always ask for a touring anytime. And our instructors are more than happy. Usually from 7 to 11, we've got students there that are willing to volunteer and to speak with anyone there about coming into the program. So that's always exciting to see the excitement between the student and our future students.
Very cool. That's great. Well, I think that wraps up all the questions I have for you today, but I just wanted to really thank you for your time and coming all the way down here to the mill to record the show with me.
Well, thank you so much, Casey. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Closing the Gap. If you like this show, subscribe on Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at MV-STEM-CTE, on Twitter at Mid-Valley STEM, and online at midvalleystem.org. Until next time, keep progressing. Hey, listeners, real quick before you go, are you looking for more STEM, STEAM, making, and career-connected learning content? You are? Well, that's great. Why don't you check out our new podcast, Mill Media? Mill Media is a collection of community-created content. You can find Women in STEAM Night panel discussions, maker lunch and learns, educational talks, deep dives from students, faculty, and community from around the Lynn Benton Community College area. You can find the show link in the description of this show, and you can always find the latest episodes at www.midvalleystem.org/mill. See you there.